everybody, Margo here from Indie Birth, and I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of forward thinking in terms of how can we really empower the next generation of women. And I guess where I'm coming from with this is I've had some really cool conversations with women locally to me and also not locally to me this week. I've also found some inspiration from one of the people that I'm drawing inspiration from lately, and kind of all the time, but right now is Danielle Laporte. She has her heart-centered program, and this month's theme was acceptance, and I'll get to that in a moment. So that's somewhere I'm drawing inspiration from, these conversations with real women. And then I was also thinking about my background in music a little bit more as I was singing some fun Christmas tunes this morning, and was thinking specifically about jazz and how I feel like being a jazz musician in my teenage years was one of the ways that I felt empowered to kind of make my own choices and experiment. And I hadn't really thought about that before. And so it got me thinking, like, okay, starting at the beginning would be this idea of acceptance. And Danielle said yesterday on a call, she said, acceptance is clarity. So it doesn't mean that we're saying it's okay how things are. It's really finding a groundedness in what is, and really starting from that place instead of kind of spinning out around the to-do list and the what next and the how to fix it. So starting from like kind of a more feminine place of like, let's actually take stock of what's available to us. And so the way that this looks, I think, with birth is how can we accept the situation we're in? So we have a lot of people reach out to us saying, hey, I'm pregnant. I can't find a midwife near me who jives with my philosophy. I'm at a hospital getting hospital-based care, and it's really outdated. It's very rigid. It's very patriarchal, all those things. Like, what do I do? So the first thing, I think, and this really does tie into what we teach in our Birth Warrior Project for people who are wanting to become doulas, birth educators, birth consultants, that kind of thing. The first thing to do is just like take a deep breath, right? And look around and see like what is happening? What is actually happening? How does it actually make us feel? And sitting with that first. So that to me is an important first step. And again, I love that she said acceptance is clarity, and without clarity, we can't make the next right choice. So if you're out there and you're pregnant, I think that's important. If you're a midwife or an aspiring midwife, I think this is important to just sit with what is and not get all, you can totally be angry, but not anger in like a, here's what I'm going to do next way, but just like sitting with those feelings, really sitting with it. So then that's one thing. And then what kind of I was thinking about and pulling in this morning as I thought more about my background. I was a saxophone player for many, many years, and considered doing that as a life path, but did not, obviously. Funny enough, Marin, she went much farther with music than I did. She was an oboe player. And so it's interesting. A lot of midwives actually have backgrounds in music. And it's this like really cool creative expression where like there are rules and there are, there's music theory and there's, and especially with the jazz playing that I did a lot of, improvisation. So there's these rules, but then there's this other expression of what it is you're trying to express, right? Sometimes within the rules, and sometimes you break the rules. And it's so much like midwifery, and it's so much like mothering, and the creative process looks the same across mediums, right? And so I think that we need to, and I'm thinking about how to do this more with my own clients and women in my own community, we really need to promote this first idea of acceptance. Let's like actually get a lay of the land and come to a place of like, ooh, okay, that's what's going on in my community, and this is what's going on for me in my pregnancy or as a birth worker. And then next, how do we practice being creative for ourselves and for our communities and moving forward? How do we express ourselves in a way that is creative and in alignment with what it is we're looking for? So I think this is also coming from Marin's recent birth story too. A lot of people saying like, how did she have that experience in the hospital? And I think it's this many years of practicing being creative. It's part of it, right? It's part of the puzzle. And being able to really create the experience around you. It's really powerful stuff. And shout out also to Donna Maria for her really cool emotional mastery class, I believe it's called. Marin and I both really have enjoyed that, and she's been working with her more one-on-one too. And Donna Maria also came on to talk to our students. Anyway, so where was I going with this? Acceptance, then this creativity piece, and then this all had me thinking about like, okay, how do we help our daughters practice this now instead of what I commonly see when women sort of start waking up to the truth about birth, and that they've been lied to all these years. They're sort of, and with the timeline that is pregnancy, right? Like you only have a certain amount of months to figure this out and figure out what you're wanting to do. There can be just like this franticness around like, I have to learn all the things. I have to take all the classes. I have to do all the self-work. I have to do yoga. I have to meditate. I have to do this. And it becomes this like big project. And I don't necessarily see that being the most effective way to move towards the kind of birth that most of these women are saying they want. So maybe we could talk about that another day, but what it's got me thinking about is like, how do we, from birth of our daughters, and sons too, but, I specifically, work with women primarily. How do we instill these concepts and teach these skills to our daughters? So today, I guess my challenge to myself and to anybody watching this, if you have daughters at home, is to talk to them about this idea of acceptance, of being grounded, of taking time to really breathe and understand what's going on around us before we act. And then this other piece with the creativity. How can we encourage them to be creative? And so my daughter really loves crafting. She really loves improv already in that way. If I ever have an idea for a craft, she's not that interested, but she will sit and cut paper and make up all kinds of amazing things on her own. And so how do we continue to support that imagination and that creativity is my pondering today, because the more empowered girls are going into womanhood, the less they're gonna have this sort of frantic, this awakening that so many of us experienced in our reproductive years, right? Like our childbearing years. And so how do we help them get the work done ahead of time so that it's not this frantic thing when it's time for them to have their own children? So where was I going with that? Other than to say, let's help them be creative. Let's help them problem solve. And let's show them that they have the power to navigate their own lives, every day in the big and small ways. I thought I had an example of this. I'd love to hear your examples, though, of ways that you see this playing out in your own lives with your girls. Just hold on. Oh, good. Someone gave me a little heart. That's always fun. I'm trying to remember what my example was. Well, I'll think of it later, perhaps. But I hope that is some food for thought today, in terms of how we can empower the next generation of women. We really have to start with these tools that, I'm just now exploring more in depth, starting in my, 20s, and now I'm 30, 31. Am I 31? I am. my 30s. And how do we kind of give them the jump start? But again, not in like a frantic, like we have to get you ahead, perfectionist, linear kind of way, but in a like, you know, these are the tools that all of us deserve to have here on planet Earth, to navigate our own like emotional lives and our own spiritual lives. And how do we extend this to girls? So this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Here at Indie Birth, we've been certainly coming up with some really fun ideas for 2021 around extending our work to younger and older women, and we will say more about that when there's more to say about that. But that's what was on my mind this morning, and I hope that you really help the girls in your life feel powerful and creative and wise today, so that they can take that forward with them. All right, lots of love. Happy Friday, and that's it from me.